When you ask yourself in the book, what's wrong with it being a religion? Your answer is, it hurts black people. Isn't that a little narrow? Doesn't it hurt everyone to believe in delusions? It seems that many black people have more to lose from being distracted from the actual problems and the actual solutions. So that's obviously the case. But explain to me more what you mean by black people. It hurts black people.
All of this is bad for the race. And that's the reason I wrote the book. I think there's some people who think that I wrote an extension of the articles I've written making the religion piece. But frankly, I bore easily, and I would not write a whole book about that. That's the first chapter, but then there's more. Second chapter, I think, actually. But then there's more. And the main point is that it hurts people. And so, to take one example, you look at the fact that black boys are suspended or sometimes expelled from school more than other boys because of violence. That is true. They are suspended more. And you take, for example, this Kendi position, and you figure that disparity must be due to racism. And you listen to a certain kind of person say, to my knowledge, that goes back 30 years. It's not just Kendi, but that kind of person. And, it's all expressed with an almost church-like kind of alliteration. I've seen this work with audiences. You talk about the bigotry against black boys, and those 3 B's just get the audience going as if that's the truth. The bigotry against black boys. And it must be that, because it couldn't be that those boys are more violent. All statistical evidence makes it painfully clear that they are. And you don't have to think of that as a matter of some sort of pathology. These boys are disproportionately poor. These boys are disproportionately growing up without dads. The question would be why they wouldn't be more violent in school, but they are. It's clear that the numbers are painfully clear. And this is shown in newspapers across the country. Journalists do diligent stories, and the journalists are all trained to smoke out racism. They all find the same thing. Nevertheless, as you say, minds don't change. The idea is that people are bigoted against these black boys. They get in a little scuffle behind school and they get expelled. But if the white kids or the South Asian kids did it, they would just get smacked on the head. It's just not true. So what happens is that in quote unquote progressive school districts, they start going easier on black boys. And that means that more people get beat up in the schools, and the GPA of the schools goes down to the extent that's happened. Now, we're not supposed to talk about that, but what that means is that it's not just bigotry against black boys who are violent, but to the extent that the elect kind of person thinks, I just know there's a certain kind of person who does the original kind of critical race theory, the actual legal articles, who would say about that, if those boys are beating up kids in those schools, well, society deserves it. They are basically expressing what America has done to them. And they're thinking of the boys as white. No, this hoists these people on their own petard. Remember that a great many black kids, and especially all of the ones who are poor for the most part, go to schools where most of the other kids are black or Latino. And so these boys are being sent to schools to beat up black boys and girls and teachers. We don't talk about that. So the whole bit about bigotry against black boys makes for great theater, but it hurts black people. One can write a chapter where one describes 15 things like that.
The move that they would make in response to that, and increasingly, is that the very ideas that being disruptive, not showing up on time, interrupting other people, these are actually functions of whiteness. That the idea that you should sit quietly in a classroom is something, or without disrupting, is a white thing. And that we have to alter the general value system so that it doesn't become a norm. Now, to my mind, and I think to any sort of normie person who hasn't been born again, and that's another word for woke, it's really born again, that seems absolutely disastrous. But that is the position held, right? I mean, if, for example, mastering reading and writing is something in which African-American kids are doing worse, it's because reading and writing are white functions, and it's really teaching them to read and write within certain targeted goals, within certain standards, is itself a function of racism.